This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Do you hear that whisper? That little voice that tugs at your heart, telling you to start living your best life. If that sounds like you, then now is the time to join Nectar Growth. It's the only place online where you can connect with and learn from great coaches with different areas of expertise. Why live another day not believing that you're enough, not seeing all that is possible for you? Why live another day dimming your own light? Nectar is the perfect place for you to discover the real you and uncover who you're meant to be. Life is a journey that we are not meant to walk alone. Nectar gives you a nurturing and supportive community to walk with you on your journey. Start living your best life and see what is truly possible. Come join us at nectargrowth.com. You know you're worth it.
Ride.
I've seen many religions condemn anyone that doesn't fit into their definition of a loving relationship. So what happens when you're part of the LGBTQIA community and want to have a relationship with God? Joining me today is De'Vannon Hubert, podcaster and author of Sex, Drugs, and Jesus, to share his story of struggles with drug addiction, dealing, homelessness, and serving in the armed forces. Welcome, De'Vannon.
Hey, Badge. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. Woo-hoo!
Thank you. So that's quite a crazy ass ride that you've been on. Where does your story begin?
My dear sweets, feel like my story begins now because I'm really just starting to feel like I'm living and I'm alive. As before I feel like I died. I lost everything. I had not, a penny to my name, and that I was aware of. And when that happens, it's like it's like that first life that I had ended. It went up in flames. There weren't any ashes left. There was just nothing. And it took about the better part of a decade for me to revive and to come back to life. And so I really feel like my story is just now beginning. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And so much happened before now. I feel like a completely new person. If I didn't already have a very exotic name, I would do a completely different name and just like change it. It's like that severe. Like whenever I adopt my children, when I'm filthy rich one day and can spoil them the way that I like to spoil myself, I'm going to change their name. Why? Because they're going to be on a completely different trajectory, and whatever led them to a point of needing to be adopted will be remembered only for the beneficial lessons, but that's not who they are anymore. Like in the Bible, when Jacob becomes Israel, or when Saul becomes Paul, sometimes you just got to change. Or when a drag queen goes from Tim to Felicia Melange at night. So sometimes you have to just be reborn, bitch. And so,
and it's something I can definitely relate to, because I was in my mid 40s when I hit what I call it scraping the bottom of shit barrel. And it was through that I got to meet my other self, the person that people see today. But before that, it was, broken, hurt, and, not having a clue what I was supposed to do with myself. And I was in my mid 40s. So.
But like one of my favorite songs from Dave Koz, the collaboration he did, It says as long as you are breathing, you can start all over again. That's the,
Well, and that's it. And I think that's what most people miss, is that they always wait for some future date to create change. I mean, the famous one is January 1st. Everybody, it's like,
right.
oh, I'm going to start a New Year's resolution. Well, why don't you just wake up tomorrow and do things differently? Like, why do you need some big grand plan? Just do things differently.
Yeah, and with that date, you're really setting yourself up to fail, because most people kind of overshoot what they're capable of doing. If you're drunk and hungover and tired, let's look at how we really start the new year. It's not exactly on a high note.
Hungover, or actually, you're probably still drunk, depending on how you're partying. But it's not the best frame of mind. You're right.
I'd rather start my new year on the summer solstice, or something like that, or on the winter solstice, when the sun's at one of his peaks, and do it like that and kind of do my own thing. But so I'm glad everything that would be considered negative happened to me, my dear sweets, because now I get to talk about it. It refined me. I'm not, arrogant anymore. I'm not vain like I was before. I don't have pride. I can ask for help if I need it. I feel refined. The Lord brought me out of the tests and the trials and everything like that. And I'm a better person for it. I take care of my worldly possessions better than I did before. My car stays clean like it didn't before. I don't have a bunch of dope fiends hanging around me and people trying to use me like I did before. I refine my friends. I pay attention. I have a better quality of living. I was thankful for stuff before, and I did what I could to help people, but not at this level. Kind of like in the Lord of the Rings when Gandalf was fighting that Balrog on the bridge of Khazad-dûm, and they fell off, and then he basically died on the side of the mountain, and he came back all glowing and glistening as Gandalf the White.
I am probably one of the only people that have not seen any of those movies.
It is a commitment. You have to set aside like a third of your life.
I'm like, no, that's okay, thanks. So, okay, you mentioned the tests and the trials.
Uh-huh.
So where in the story does the drug addiction come in? What sort of initiated that?
That all came into play when I got kicked out of Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas, for being a member of the Alphabet Mafia community. And the reason why that was a pivotal moment is because I had been around drugs since I was a child. I was raised in the hood, every other house, the crack house. I wasn't allowed out of the yard. I was almost kidnapped when I was a child, that type of thing. A nice, wholesome environment to raise a child in. And so, I went off to the military. People were doing drugs there. I didn't do them. I mean, I pulled a Bill Clinton and I may have puffed on a little bit of weed, but I did not inhale.
Well, it's legal here in Canada. And guess what? I inhale.
I know that's right. And so do what you do. And so, and then even after I got out of the military, I'm in Houston, Texas. I'm trying to date guys and stuff like that. They all are doing crystal meth and whatnot. And I didn't realize then, I'm right here by the border. That's why there's so much meth and so much drugs and dope. And I'm just still turning it down because I had a strong, church religious influence and everything like that. And, I'm volunteering at church 10 hours a week. I am the volunteer supervisor for the Wednesday night kids service over all the elementary school kids, like second, third grade to fifth. Worship leader in the kids service on Wednesday night. Plus I teach my own group of third grade boys on Wednesday nights. I get there early to set up and I stay late to check all the kids out after I've checked them in. I'm singing the adult choir at Lakewood on the Saturday night service and the two English services on Sunday mornings. And this is a huge church. It's the largest church in the United States. And so, I got called into the office because I had a really racy photo on my MySpace page. That's how long ago this was and how new social media was. I had applied for a job there because I was really, into this church, and I really had my head way far up their asses, and I should not have. So I'm glad that I got fired from volunteering. So they found my dirty, scandalous MySpace photo, and it was me in a cowboy hat with like some torn sleeves on and like little underwear, and I was just like serving face, bitch, and I looked good, and so I put the picture up there, and so they found it, called me, and they were like, "We found your scandalous photo. And the lady, it was the adult choir pastor and the lady in charge of the kids ministry. And she was like, I'll never forget her word. She was like, you can't be doing, referring to the Montrose, to the gay part of Houston where I lived. And no, that's not where I live. That's where I hung out at. And she was like, you can't be doing that out there, hanging out there with them. And this that's how she referred to the gay community in Houston. And so since I identified as not straight, I think I had on there bisexual at the time, but now I'm all the letters. She was like, you can't, you're relieved of your duties. So I couldn't be around the kids anymore. I couldn't go say goodbye to anybody, which is really the worst part of it. So no more singing in the adult choir, no more any of those volunteer responsibilities. They said I could be an usher though, and if I accepted their remedial conversion therapy package and read books to become ungay, then perhaps I could work my way back into their graces. And so then I had a choice to make, to either whip their asses on holy ground and shed blood, or just get up and walk the fuck out. And I'll never forget their confused faces. They just looked at each other like they couldn't believe I didn't accept their generous conversion therapy package as I got up and
I just and I'm trying to have empathy for where they are, because they're coming with their own stories. But like, I can't help but think how I would feel if somebody told me that they want me to take conversion therapy because they didn't like who I was. Like, they want me to stop being a redhead. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get that. So to come to you and say, you're not welcome here unless you're straight. I grew up in the Anglican church, and I was always taught we're all God's children. So when did God start picking and choosing who he liked and who he didn't, or who's allowed in his circle?
well, people like that are so full of themselves and so convoluted, and they don't realize it. Every generation has to have your hypocrites, your Pharisees, your Sadducees, like those people who, when history is written, are going to be the people who thought they were doing what God wanted them to do, but really they were the assholes of the day, the religious assholes. And that's how they are at Lakewood Church. And at many different places. It's not the only place that stuff like that happens, but they're so stuck on their own way. Like, they weren't interested in my point of view. Why did I do the things that they weren't asking me? The decision was made when I showed up. You will be fired. This is why. This is our prescribed way to deal with this. I can barely say a word, and when I tried to mutter anything, I was immediately cut off. They were like angry at me and offended, like I had personally did them something wrong, because I never went up there with any guys. I didn't come up in there death dropping and twirling and doing cartwheels and throwing glitter all over the place. I did that outside of church, but they were just so caught up in their own image of what they feel like something is supposed to be. And that's the greatest grievance that I have against religious people and church people and denominational people, well, the mean ones, is because they're not willing to take a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth look at things, however many you have to continue to refine your perspectives. They feel like the way they think about something is it shouldn't change, cannot change. And if anybody else isn't doing it, then those other people must be wrong. And that is the lack of humility, why I work to separate my reputation from church people. I believe in God and the Trinity, but I don't fuck with churches and denominations. There are loving, affirming LGBTQ denominations out there: Lutheran Church, Episcopalian Church, Metropolitan Community Churches. There are places we can go. But after everything I went through, I'd rather just do my own personal thing, with the Lord, which
And
is the
that's
most.
it. That's why I don't go to church anymore, is because, in my experience, some of the most unchristian people were the people that went there every Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Preach, sister.
Like, I've seen the way that they react, the way they bitch at people, the way that they approach things, and there's no universal love in any of it. They're all doing it in the name of God. And we just looked at it one day and we're like, I don't think so. Like, I just don't. Now, we're quite spiritual. And I, just because for me, God, the term God is always seems to be connected with the church. So I just prefer to refer to the universe. That's just, my personal choice. But, whether you call our higher power God or the universe, it's still that universal connectivity that we all have with one another.
Right. And I don't care what people believe in. Hey, I love going to hang out at the Buddhist temple. That great vegetarian food. I'm around under bald people like me, and I really feel comforted, in ways I never could in any other religious facility. My God, you can eat off the floor, at the one that I go to here in Baton Rouge. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about how in the last times, in the end times, that there would be a great falling away from the church. And you see, everything about scripture is about interpretation. The arrogant people in church think that falling away has to happen because people just become heathen and just decide to abandon God. I believe that falling away happens, probably maybe a little bit of that, but mostly because of people in our situation who have seen the bullshit in churches and don't want to go anymore. So when they see their pews emptying out and things like that, they're so into themselves and the way they think, they're going to go, those people just have abandoned God. No, bitch, we've abandoned you. We've abandoned your rituals, your fucking the robes and this and all of this shit that you have to fucking do, every Sunday, and we don't even fucking know why and who made the shit up.
Well, and it's funny because my husband, his family, or he was Roman Catholic, and he went to Catholic school here in Canada. And I don't know if you heard of what's happened in the Catholic Church in Canada and our schools and stuff like that. But, let's just say that some of the priests that worked at his high school were charged.
A scandal.
But he has a greater understanding of the history of religion. And he's always contended that the book that they didn't include in the Bible was the book of Jesus. And the book of Jesus states that, God is within us, and any place we are is our church.
Yeah, the Bible says wherever two or more are gathered together, I will be there in the midst. So as long as you have enough faith, honey, there is nothing more valuable than your alone time with God. But see, we go to church to seek community and shit like that, and a fraternity, college, gay, drag house, all of it is community. No man's an island. We will seek community, and churches provide you that. So once this community was taken from me, and I didn't understand trauma the way I do now. I didn't understand the way we will seek out community in one form or another. I thought in my head, okay, well, I'll just go out to the streets and to the nightclubs more. I was only going out like once or twice a month, or I started going out like every night, trying to fill this void. I should have gotten counseling and help, but I didn't do that. I was like, I'll just go to these clubs where I know I won't be judged, where you can truly show up as you are and nobody's going to be uncomfortable because I walked in the room. And so once this happened, my filter left. And so everything I used to say no to, the next guy who offered me drugs, I just said yes. And so then I started saying yes to every fucking thing, I think, as a way of rebelling, as a way of acting out. And I was certainly angry and bitter. From that time that I got kicked out, it took about 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years after being homeless and in and out of jail and everything before I actually walked into a church again, as opposed to having had been in church consistently my entire life up until I was almost 30 years old. I let that cause that break. I should, because I wasn't as solid in God as I thought I was. I hadn't yet learned how to separate preachers in church from God like I have now. I should never have let that experience cause me for there to be silence between me and heaven.
Were you mad at God?
No, but I wasn't mad at him. Maybe I was mad at myself for buying into the church's bullshit for that long. But still, I meshed the anger together. And I guess I associated God with the churches, and we can project anger in places that it shouldn't be, when we're not mature in our perspectives. And I was not mature, so it doesn't matter what stupid shit a preacher does now. I know better. Oh, you just a preacher. That's
They're
all
just
you
people.
are.
They're just
You're just,
people.
I had them on too high of a pedestal. And
Yeah.
and I just did. That was my mistake as a youngling. But we learn and grow. But that is what opened the door for me to be susceptible to narcotics, whereas I hadn't been before. And then once that started, you know,
Was the drug use part of you trying to find that community, replace the community that you had lost in the church, so that you were almost repeating the same pattern by doing what you had to do to fit in?
right, absolutely, because I really wasn't from that sort of a life. Because of being of God, if you hadn't done any hard drugs till you're 30, you're not a drug person. you know, it's not who you are. But we all break. I mean, we can break bad. At some point, if something bad happens, and so that was a bit enough of a shock to my nervous system and to who I was to cause me to make bad decisions. And yes, I did. It was some level of conformity, but I also took quite naturally to it as well, because I am very wild by nature. I was always the one at the club dancing till they closed and got there to help them open and put the decorations up. So it fit into my lifestyle. I was already
Yeah.
going to work drunk, calling off drunk. So, hey, let's just throw a pill in there, so it's not like it was that far fetched. Um, and then, hey, so we started with an ecstasy pill. It was like an Asian X pill. The guy explained to me what to do, how to do it. Cool. Next guy, he was like, I was doing a party at my apartment in Montrose, Houston. We're in the kitchen. He pulls out this bag with the white powder. It's cocaine. He's like, have you done this before? I'm like, no. He's like, you want to try it? I'm like, sure. Then it was G after that. Then I found a GHB, GBL. And I found a guy like on an app, and he was doing meth, Tina, Crystal, whatever you want to call her. And I had avoided crystal meth. I started with the little drugs and worked my way up. And then one day I was like, fuck it, it's time to take this dive too. Try that shit, and then I really liked crystal, and I was like, this shit is like the perfect drug. I don't need any of the other ones. So I pretty much stopped all the other ones, more or less. And then I just started doing crystal. Then I started learning how I got introduced to a dealer. Then I started learning how I could get my friends' money to buy in bulk and cover my own habit. So because I have a business mind, so I started turning into a business, and I became a drug runner, delivering drugs first, and then I worked my way up into becoming a drug dealer. I didn't need to do this. I had a job making $30 to $70 an hour, but the community was strong. This drug dealer was like a father to me. Yet I had a very strained relationship with my own dad. He was very fatherly to me. It's true, he was only using me for his advantages, but I didn't realize that. He was showing me affection, this community, the other drug users. It's like the criminal underworld has its own community, and it does provide comfort. You are accepted. There's people who are homeless who have nowhere to go, who have to come stay at drug houses when they can't get in anywhere else. Um, the way it works, so when you're asking somebody to give up drugs, a homeless person to stop being homeless, you're asking them to give up their community and the only life that they know. There's a whole economic system that works in the bar scene, in the club scene, in the drug scene. I'll say this and I'll be quiet for it. It's like a symbiotic relationship, how I grow all my plants and shit out here in my garden, but I need the bees and the fucking gnats and shit to come and pollinate, or the shit won't make. It's like at a bar, you have your whole infrastructure, but the bars, there's always a drug dealer there to come and push the drugs and shit to help create the whole nightlife vibe. You don't have to, the bar owner doesn't need to go and find a drug dealer. They're just going to fly right on over there like a bee to the pollen and everything like that. That symbiotic relationship is expected, and that's around the globe that way. And when you grasp an understanding and you can own and master that type of shit, you don't want to let it go. You don't. It becomes intoxicating.
Yeah, I'd never thought of community in those environments. I'd never looked at it like that before, but I can see how that makes sense. So did the drugs lead to the homelessness?
My drug dealing. Well, I got really messy once I found out that I got HIV. So I found out that I had HIV from a voicemail that the doctor left on New Year's Eve 2011. And so leading with 2010, leading into 2011, shit, one of those, fuck, I can't remember. I think it was years 2011. I'm thankful it's been so long, I'm starting to forget. Hallelujah. And so that caused me to have, I think, a nervous breakdown. I left my job at Centerpoint Energy at the light company because I didn't want to get anybody fried with the high voltages of electricity that I was dealing with out there in substations, which is 345 kilovolts of electricity, typically speaking, which is enough to kill a man. And I wasn't trying to have that on my conscience. I couldn't get my head clear or stop crying and shit. And so I just stopped because I thought I was going to die. In those days, people were still dying in Houston from AIDS. Everyone who I had known in life had shriveled up and died from AIDS. And so in my head, I was thinking I would be dead by August. I have no foundation or reason. I just came up with that shit. And that's what I chose to believe. I was foolish. But what we believe directs our steps. And so since I thought I was going to die in a few months anyway, I was like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to party my ass off until I die. So then I just stopped caring how people treat me. I just like whatever, just let people walk all over me and shit. I should have gone gotten help, but I was too prideful. I didn't think I could. And I felt unexpected emotions from this. Like I felt very guilty. I felt dirty and filthy and ashamed. I tried to go to a club and I just very paranoidly thought everyone would know that I have HIV somehow. There's no way for that to have happened. And so I went from going out to the club like every day to like nothing at all. So that's how I became an at-home drug user once I got the HIV diagnosis. And then, one sloppy move led to another. Then I got drug raided by SWAT. They came in like 45 at least armed men, semi-automatic rifles, Kevlar vests, SWAT, the K9 dogs, face shields, helicopters, white vans outside everything. It's not like I wasn't making moves. I was very bold. I was known all over fucking Houston. The people I was getting my dope from, and a lot of people don't believe this because I'm Black and I'm gay, but I did have ties to Aryan Nation, and they're not known for exactly being accepting of Black or gay people. But when you can move dope and make money, they don't give a fuck what color you are, because you have a lot of people out there who cannot sell drugs. You would think it's easy. You have some drug dealers who really fucking suck. And so the people I was getting from was moving like maybe 2 keys a day of meth. And I was good enough to get their attention so, without saying exactly how much weight I was moving and stuff like that. And so they had a right to come send SWAT after me.
Can't even imagine. So in all of this shitstorm that you were in, what was the turning point? What made you choose something differently? Wake up one day and go, I'm going to do it differently.
I think the last time that I was in jail, I got arrested 1, 2, 3 times in 2012. The last time when I was caught trying to pass a bogus check at Bank of America that some random guy who picked me up at a bus station wanted me to cash for him. Me homeless, you ain't got shit to do. You're just walking around anyway, like fuck it, sure. And so I'm banned from Bank of America for life for that incident. And while I was in there, by then it was like September, and I was like, well, we're past my August death date, my D date, so I'm kind of still alive. And then when I was in there, I met a doctor who was intelligent and compassionate enough to explain to me HIV genotypes. He really got down into the science of it. They tricked me. They told me I was going to the ID clinic, girl, and I'm thinking I'm about to get my picture taken, and it was really infectious disease clinic. So I didn't realize that till I was down there. Otherwise, I might not have gone, because I hated the term infectious disease from the time I got HIV. I was like, why can't we call this something fucking else? And so since he was so nice and compassionate, that was when the first glimmer of light broke through. And I was like, you know what? We're not going to die. We have to start to pull our shit together and fuck. You know, we didn't pay taxes. We got all this credit. It's terrible. You know, that was when, now it didn't get fixed overnight, and I didn't get off drugs or anything like that overnight, and I was certainly still homeless when I got out of jail, but that was when I had the epiphany and the light came on that I wasn't going to die, and this shit was manageable, and that we could actually work with this.
Well, it's my understanding that the drugs that treat HIV have come such a long way since it was first discovered, almost to the point where HIV becomes barely detectable in the body.
It's considered undetectable. So the way HIV is spread is a person has to be unhealthy enough to have enough viral load. Like it's measured in parts per millions, I believe it is, in like the blood. And so you have to have enough of it on board to pass to somebody for them to get infected. If you only have like a cell or two, is not enough. It's a very frail virus. Like if you put it on a spoon, it'll die in 24 hours, for instance. Whereas hepatitis is not like that. It'll stay alive for like 30 days on a spoon. And so, so yeah, if you take your medicine, and they don't ever guarantee you and say 100%, because there are exceptions to everything, but everybody I know now who has HIV, is a lot of people, everybody, if they take their medicine and stuff like that, then they're fine, they're undetectable. They have very happy, healthy sex lives, and everything like that. And so it's actually a community of people who are HIV positive within the gay community, and it's like a shitload of people. So if you are not alone. If you should contract HIV, if anything, you've just been elevated in some ways. And I'm not saying go run out there and get it, but there are people who do intentionally get infected with HIV for their own reason. That's called getting bugged. And they don't want to worry about it anymore because they like to be very promiscuous. So their thinking is, well, I'll just go get it intentionally, so I don't have to worry about it. Some people like it when they do that. Some people hate it. Everyone's different. So yeah, but overall, and then they have test trials being done now on just cures for it and everything like that. And then you have PrEP, which you can take, which is like Truvada. So if you're HIV negative, you can still be in a relationship with somebody who's HIV positive, and if you take your PrEP pill, it will shield you from getting HIV from them. And so we didn't have all that back in my day, but there's so many options now.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly come leaps and bounds since, when was it first discovered? In the late 70s, early 80s?
All I know is when it was discovered, we had good Dr. Anthony Fauci there at the helm, helping us to kick its ass, and he's still with us today. Hallelujah, tabernacle and praise.
There you go. De'Vannon, just as we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts, words of wisdom for our listeners?
My encouragement to everyone is always to do something with your spirit, to have some sort of spiritual identity, some sort of spiritual activity, some sort of spiritual activism within yourself, and not to leave your soul sitting on a shelf. Most people will agree that we all have some sort of soul spirit, or some sort of a part to us that is non-physical and real and will live on, no matter how you believe. Most people at least agree on that. So my whole thing is this: just like anything else, if you don't do anything with it, it'll die, it'll become malnourished, and you will become out of balance. I ain't saying go to church. I might even much suggest not to, unless you have a really good one to go to. But I am saying do something with your spirit, some sort of prayer, meditation, something, so that you don't come out of balance. I know it's hard when some of my straight friends won't fool with any kind of religion or anything like that because of the sort of stuff that they've seen done to people in the LGBT community. So let's not be bitter. We're going to read those church bitches for filth, and we will have our day, with them. But, do something with your spirit, do something with it.
Very powerful, very powerful. And where is the best place for people to connect with you, listen to your podcast, grab a copy of your book?
The website is sexdrugsandjesus.com. Everything is housed there. And it's just the first chapter of the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus memoir that's out, or the prologue, or whatever we're going to end up doing with it. The rest of the book will be out hopefully sooner than later. It's pretty much done. We just gotta, do some more editing and stuff, but everything is there. I like to keep it, I'm very extra, but I do like to keep some things simple. So just one website will lead you to everything.
Perfect. Well, if you're listening and you're looking at connecting with De'Vannon, make sure you check out the show notes. I will have all of the links in there. And De'Vannon, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story today.
It's been my pleasure, my sugar.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby.